So Borderlands 4 is officially out now. I have played a good chunk of it. Some of you guys in chat have also played a good chunk of it. And as you can see on Steam right now, we are sitting at mixed reviews. Now, as I'm sure we all can suspect and could have predicted, it's mostly performance issues is the primary concern. This one, none of my friends can get the game to start past the main menu. When you quit and restart, it doesn't close the original instance and still uses full memory. This one, refunded after freeze, Steam couldn't even close it. Hot garbage on the best available hardware, 9950X 3D and 5090. It runs both lowest settings and highest settings, stuck at 55 to 61 FPS. Even toggling 4X frame gen on or off doesn't budge the frame rate, so that's totally broken. This one, Stutterlands 4 review, an unholy trio of pricing, UE5, and Denuvo. Terrible optimization, another Unreal Engine 5 casualty, not worth buying in its current state unless you have a NASA PC. So on and so forth. I've tested it. I've played it. And I need to paint you a little picture of what happened here, okay? Just so you have a clear understanding. You remember 3-4 days ago, there were previews. Actually, I think it was longer. It was like a week ago. It was like the 4th or 5th of September is when they put that out. What happened is they sent us review codes like maybe the 4th, the 3rd. I got mine like the day before the preview embargo went up, but let's just say they sent out the codes on like the 3rd. Okay, so the 3rd. On the 3rd, this version of the game right here ran like hot donkey ass, like bad, okay? Stuttering to the point where like you'd go into a zone, it would stall for a solid quarter second and then move forward. Like it was basically unplayable. And I was like, this is not great. And there were articles posted when that preview embargo went up where we were only allowed to talk about the first like couple hours of the game. And those previews largely mentioned the bad performance if they were playing on PC. People playing on console, you know, apparently have had very little issue, but on console or on PC, it's been an issue. Roughly like half a week later, I believe it was around the 8th, I want to say, I think. Don't quote me on these exact dates, but it was around there. They issued a patch on the back end for reviewers. That significantly improved things, like to a large degree. So it went from unplayable to not great, but at least playable. It still stutters when you enter areas, but it's better. Back on the, I think it was the 10th, maybe 9th or 10th, they issued the NVIDIA drivers. So like that's often a big cause of concern with reviews is if you're experiencing a lot of performance issues. Sometimes it can just be because the new drivers aren't out. And once you get the new drivers, it greatly improves performance. So they issued those. And after those drivers went out on the 9th or 10th, whatever it was, I made my video that went up on the main channel this morning. And so all that footage you're seeing in that video is with it running the best possible situation I could have had it. And even then, it's not great. So it was really not great a week ago. Now it's better, but it's still not great. And here's the thing. The game basically requires a supercomputer to run, unfortunately. If you're playing on PC, it is extremely heavy, like extremely heavy. And I could try to come up with a reason as to why that is. I think there's a couple different possible explanations for it. Here's some gameplay footage of the game from Jack Frags. I could try to come up with a reason for why it's so heavy. I think a lot of it is that it's just one of these games that's running in Unreal Engine 5 and it requires and is built around using upscalers. So what I've seen is that people who are complaining about really bad performance, who are saying they're getting in like the 20s with 5090s and stuff, they're trying to brute force it at native resolution, which unfortunately for old school gamers like us, it's just not, we're kind of past the age of developers building games to run natively. I know, I'm a boomer too. I feel it. I would rather games run natively. I think it looks better. I think it's just a better option, but that's just not how devs are working nowadays. Nowadays, they are building games with the assumption you're going to run it at like 1080p and upscale to 1440, or render it at 1440 and upscale it to 4K, or let's be real, more realistically, render it at 530p and upscale to 4K. Let's just be real with what's happening. So I think that that's part of the reason some people are seeing excessively rough performance, is because they're trying to get it to run like KCD2 when it's just not. KCD2, you remember when they posted that performance spec sheet where they say like, hey, minimum requirements, recommended specs, ideal, whatever. When they posted that, I remember replying to that tweet and asking, is this running, or are these recommendations based on using upscalers, or is this based on running native? And they replied almost instantly. Satobi replied and was like, nope, all of our optimization is done assuming no upscalers, and then upscalers are used to give you further improved performance. But we are not building this in a way where we are assuming you're going to use upscalers. We don't want you to have to do it unless you want to. And again, yet another reason why KCD2 is goated and why Warhorse are absolute chads. And it's because they kind of get this. Whereas a lot of other games, especially Unreal Engine games, are being built with the presumption that you're going to use temporal upscalers and tools like FSR, DLSS to get it running decently. In addition to all of this other stuff, because there are certainly performance issues, there is a shader compilation issue within Unreal Engine with open world games just in general that has been pervasive for years at this point, that they did significantly improve again with that patch on the 8th. They did fix that and apparently rebuild a lot of how the shader compilation works for the open world stuff. So it's way better. Here it was basically running straight out of the box with that version, and it was, like I said, unplayable. But the version that they posted on the 8th, way better, but still it stutters and it's still really heavy to run. Paired with all of this is the additional problem, which is Denuvo. If you don't know Denuvo is the anti-piracy software layer that basically goes into a lot of PC games, especially on the AAA side of the industry. And they basically what they do is they try to prevent you from being able to crack the game and pirate it. It's the idea, at least. And it does this by constantly checking with like an external server. It's why a lot of these games will require always online connections, even when they're offline single player games, because if they have Denuvo, they have to make sure that the copy of the game you're running is legitimate, and they do that with that Denuvo software. There's other things that I do not understand because I'm not smart enough to understand it, but Denuvo does other things to try and prevent piracy that also gobbles up resources and can make games run poorly. Denuvo insists that their software does not affect performance negatively, but anybody who's ever played a game with Denuvo and then a version of it without Denuvo has noticed that it runs better without Denuvo. So, put two and two together. Like, it's always an exciting day when a game is patched to remove Denuvo. Because usually, once the game is cracked, because people will still be able to crack it even with the Denuvo software installed into the core package of the game. And so once they eventually crack it, there's no reason to have Denuvo anymore. So then the studios will update their game, removing Denuvo, and all of a sudden the game runs better. So it's like, okay, that seems to suggest that it runs better without it, but okay. Sure, it doesn't affect performance at all. Yeah, totally. But anyway, this all just kind of compounds onto a narrative that has been getting built up and up and up. And this is just one more piece of it, which is that Unreal Engine games run like crap and are poorly optimized, and it's just another Unreal Engine game. And what did the Steam review say? The Steam review mentioned like another victim of Unreal Engine. Another Unreal Engine 5 casualty. And unfortunately that's the perception a lot of people have, is that when they see Unreal Engine 5, they sigh, thinking this is about to be crappy. They responded. Hold on, the devs responded to this one. Yeah, Randy Pitchford told us to have realistic expectations. Fine, here's mine. I expect a $70 game to not run like a beta test. I expect a studio with Gearbox's legacy to not let DRM strangle its own players. I expect respect. Instead, we got excuses. Unless Gearbox pulls its head out of its own hype machine, Borderlands 4 could kill the franchise. First, the garbage and total joke of a movie. Now this broken mess. They're turning the legacy into a joke. I will say the movie is on another level. I watched all of like 25 minutes of it, and I was really struggling. Maybe I'll go back and try to actually finish it, but like, wow. Let's see. 2K Link said, we're sorry you're experiencing issues playing Borderlands 4. If you have an NVIDIA card, we have an article on how to optimize it. If you're operating on a different graphics card, check out our PC troubleshooting guide. And if your issues persist, submit a support request. We appreciate your help and patience as we work to resolve this issue. It's better than BGS's customer support response. At least they're not like, frame drops are actually part of the fun. That would be the BGS approach. But all of this to say, it's really frustrating, again, to have a game that otherwise is pretty good. Like, from what I've played, I actually have had a lot of fun with Borderlands 4. I understand some people wish, I actually saw for the first time, somebody saying they wish it was more like comedic and campy and silly like Borderlands 3. And I was like, that's the first time I've seen somebody say they wish it was more like Borderlands 3. But some people are wishing that. Some people are saying that they wish it wasn't like as open-ended open world as it is. But whatever. Overall, the reviews are pretty much in line with what I think most people were expecting. It's sitting at an 84 on Metacritic right now. Borderlands 3 was at like a 77, 81 on its original version. Ultimate Edition is at 77, but I guess Switch 2, that explains it. But Borderlands 3 was at 81. Borderlands 2 was at 89. So like, it's in the 80s. It's in the ballpark of where they wanted to be or kind of expected to be. But it's why it's so frustrating when games like this launch with technical issues, is that then all of that gets thrown out the wayside, and this is all we're talking about, is that it runs badly. And it's just frustrating because if it ran well, we'd get to talk about the game itself. We would get to talk about some of the build crafting. We get to talk about some of the boss encounters, which are pretty cool, honestly. We get to talk about the co-op and all that. But instead, now we're just focused on how it is another example of it running stupid and bad, and it's frustrating. It's really, really frustrating. So I don't know. The thing is, I think eventually Unreal and Epic, they will have to respond to all these problems, because it is now a stereotype that Unreal Engine games run poorly. That is the stereotype. And as I've said before, perception is the reality you have to deal with. So if everybody kind of perceives it that Unreal Engine runs games poorly, and if a game is made in Unreal Engine, it's going to be rough and stuttery and a mess, and you're probably going to wait for a sale, that affects Epic's bottom line, because that means that players are automatically discounting games if they see it running in their tool set. And that means devs will also consider that when they're selecting what engine they want to use. You know, IOI, they've been talking a lot about their engine, the Glacier engine. And I didn't realize this, but apparently the Glacier engine is also the core of the engine used in Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't realize that, but apparently like it was a major component of their tool set as well. So I think like IOI is going to start to shop their engine around to a lot of people who are looking for an alternative to Unreal Engine, because people now, when they see Unreal Engine, they roll their eyes. And so I think Epic has to respond to this and get out ahead of it. And whether or not it is in fact true that Unreal Engine is solely responsible for the performance woes of these games, that's the perception. That's the perception. Whether it's the dev's fault or it's Epic's fault, the result is the same, which is that players roll their eyes when they see like an Unreal Engine game. And so they got to deal with it. Maybe that means sending engineers to go and help developers working on Unreal Engine, help them polish and optimize. Maybe that's the cheapest solution, or it's some sort of major overhaul to how the game handles shader compilation, because that seems to be where most of these problems creep up. Just general optimization needs to happen across the board, because again, it's kind of insane that you can have a PC that's $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 and it's struggling to break 60 frames. Like, that's just silly. And again, it's one thing if a game is photorealistic. That's my thing. If the game is photorealistic, I can go along with rough performance, because like I get it, you know? Like I get it. I can understand it. Oh, this runs poorly, but it looks phenomenal. So I'm okay with it running at 30, for example. But I just don't see that with Borderlands 4. Like it looks good. Like some of the environments look good, but like I would call it amazing. Like I can look and I can see, oh, they increased the polygon counts. I can see that they increased the texture resolution and quality. They're rendering at higher resolutions than ever before. I get all of that, but like I just don't think it looks that good to justify running so poorly. Oh, Lo-Fi, you're right.
Lo-Fi Lazy donated $10 through Super Chat. Perfect time for the creation engine to take over, baby.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that's the pivot? BGS is like, we are now going to become the next Epic. Creation engine will rule the world. Can you imagine? Oh God, that would be funny. I did see a video, I think Nick Tech put it together, of what if Silksong was made by different companies, and they had Silksong if it was made by BGS, and it was like literally every time you move to the edge of the screen and you load into a new like tile or whatever, load screen. It's like, okay, yeah, that's pretty funny. It's pretty good. 5% better looking for half the performance. Yeah, I mean, that's basically what it feels like. And again, perception is the reality that you have to deal with. And with this, it's just the perception is that it runs poorly and they got to fix it. Yeah. May Todd's load screens shine upon you. Indeed. Indeed. Anyway, with all this stuff with Borderlands, the core takeaway, I think, is that if you're a fan of Borderlands, you're going to like the game. It's honestly pretty good. The unfortunate reality is that it just runs poorly. Console performance remains to really have been seen or tested in depth, so we'll see how that looks. My guess is that it will run much better on consoles. Unreal Engine games tend to have an easier time on console versus PCs, and so that and like Denuvo will not be a problem on console, so that also is a component, but still. Yeetus Deletus Ultra, thank you for that. I don't know what you are all on about. Real fans Borderlands will find a way to enjoy the game with the stutters. I'm on my way to Pismo Beach with my friends to play the game right now. Hell yeah. Real fans will find a way. You're right. Real fans will. Real fans, yes. Yes. That's a reference, everybody, before you get mad at Yeetus Deletus. That's an old reference. Okay, don't get mad at him. The Decima engine is better. Well, so the Decima engine is very good at what it wants to do, and it was kind of built and reworked from the ground up for open world adventure games, which is why it's so good in Horizon for what it's trying to do, and it's so good in like Death Stranding for what it's trying to do. It would not necessarily be the best engine for like it would not work for a game like a Starfield. I don't think it would work for a game with a lot of complex physics simulation, you know, like a Hitman or even like, you know, the new 007 game. I don't think you could get that running in Decima. So it's just different. Like each engine is different and they each have their own strong suits and use cases. You know, the particular version, is it Cryo that Warhorse uses for KCD2? The specific engine that they're using for KCD2, like they really tweaked it and built it from the ground up specifically for the kind of game that they wanted to make. And that's why it works so well for what they're trying to do. But I don't think it would necessarily work well for like Cyberpunk. The Cry engine. There it goes. Yeah, I said Cryo. Yeah, Cry engine. And it looks really well. It's super well optimized. Dude, that thing, I could play it on a handheld on the plane for hours because it was so optimized. It ran so well. It was so refreshing. But unfortunately, that is not the case for a lot of these other games. So, and we know the other thing is, and the reason why I'm not one to just blindly dismiss Unreal Engine writ large is because of this. Do you guys remember seeing the video, the hands-on impressions of Silent Hill F from Digital Foundry? This is an Unreal Engine game that runs at a locked 60.
But it's all visually speaking, because this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, but it looks so clean. It's remarkably stable. It doesn't have the typical splotchiness and the sort of like temporal noise that we're so accustomed to with UE5 games. Edges were super sharp in both cases. The performance stable, stutters 0. Everything about it just like looked and ran so well that you almost wouldn't guess that it's a UE5 game, but you can tell once you look closely because the game really leverages that indirect lighting.
True.
Made possible with Lumen, which it is, from what I could tell, just software Lumen currently.
In this footage as well, right here, you can see there's a couple points, like there's these scarecrow-looking things when they're on the farm fields, and their reflections appear to just be handled by SSR. So I think that lends credence to what you saw there subjectively when you were seeing the demo.
This is an Unreal Engine game, and it runs fantastically well for what it is. And you can hear that they're surprised by it. And it's because Typically, Unreal Engine games like this would have like a lack of sharpness because they'd be relying on upscalers and things, and temporal upscalers specifically, to try and get performance to improve by rendering at lower resolutions and stuff. Which is why Unreal Engine games can often look really good, in still shots, but once you get them in movement and motion, it starts to look like really blurry and sharp edges are all dithered and soft. That's not a problem here because they optimized the crap out of it. And I think what's happened is that a lot of companies view Unreal Engine as a great tool set because it allows them to get to the point where it's good enough in their eyes quickly and cheaply. So you can get the game running technically at 30 or 60 frames using upscalers. It doesn't look the best, it doesn't run very well, but you can get there. Good enough, Good enough, and I think that's how they view it. But that means that they then don't spend the time, money, and resources bringing in like graphics engineers and software engineers to come in and further optimize and overhaul the engine for their specific uses in the game that they're making to make it run better. And amazingly enough, even though like Konami just had another like Silent Hill Delta, which ran remarkably poorly and was very unoptimized, and then they have this, which is the complete opposite, evidently. It's kind of surprising, but I think it shows that it's not necessarily just the engine. It is how you use the engine, and it is in fact possible to get it running well if you spend the time, money, and resources on making those improvements and customizing it how you need. We look back at games like Batman Arkham Knight, and I'm sorry that we started talking about Borderlands and now we've shifted into Arkham Knight. But Jacob, you can go ahead, keep all this in because I think it's relevant. We look back at Batman Arkham Knight, and this game, this launched at this point a decade ago. This is a decade old. Launched in 2015. And if this launched today, I think we would all say, oh, it's one of the best looking games of this year. It's wild how impressive it runs and looks. But this was also Unreal Engine, but I believe this was a heavily modded version of Unreal Engine 3, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think they had upgraded to Unreal Engine 4 at this point. But the point is they had heavily overhauled it and customized it specifically to get it running the way that they wanted to run it. And it's also what they did with Batman Arkham City, and they also used Unreal for Batman Arkham Origins as well, Asylum as well. And it's just because they used the tool set, but they really overhauled it to make it run the way they wanted it to run. And it worked great. The 30 FPS target also certainly helped. Sure, that is certainly a component of this. The new trend pushing for 60 has forced developers, I think, largely to find places to cut corners, and they found that in various different ways, probably mostly by relying on upscalers and stuff to save the frame budget timing. But still. Also, it triggers me to see somebody playing Batman Arkham Knight with a mouse and keyboard. That just seems wrong. To me, it's just it's such a clear example of a game you play with a controller that it's jarring to see that. But anyway, I'll calm down. CZ James, I do. Okay, and banned. No. So anyway, it's too bad that Borderlands is having these performance issues. I hope they fix them quickly because I think the game is really good if you can get past the performance issues, and I hope that they're able to get past them quickly because the game at the core of it is pretty dang good. It's just that they got to figure it out. They got to get it working better because where it's at now, I don't think is acceptable on PC.